Hey there. So I had someone respond to one of my videos about digital versus traditional when it comes to comic book art. And someone asked a question, what size canvas do you use in Procreate? Because I'm working on this person's working on their own graphic novel right now, and they're really stumped if they want to do digital or traditional for the final product. They go on to say that their main fear with digital is sizing or losing quality with resizing on Procreate. Just ask, hey, I'd love to see how you set up your Procreate canvas for a comic if you ever make a video about that in the future. Well, I'm going to make a video about that right now. So I'm just going to give you my 2 cents. So here are some comic books that I've actually printed. I do release my comics on my website digitally, but I've also made stuff in print. So this here is like a larger kind of prestige format of my comic book. And these are like the floppies, if you will, of the comics that I make. I will say that I've done a combination of both traditional art and digital art for this series. And to be quite honest, that's just because this is indie and I can do whatever I want. But really, honestly, it's just because sometimes I get bored drawing digitally and sometimes I get bored drawing traditionally. And so I mix it up. Just to show you here are a couple of artboards here from the 3rd issue of my Realm Ethereal series. And these are, I think these are 10 by 14 inch artboards right here. And then you can see, this is the 3rd issue. Let me show you a little bit here. So here's how this page printed out. I know you weren't asking about traditional necessarily, but just to point out, like, yeah, I've done pages both traditionally. This is ink. Here's this page here. Traditional, obviously. And here's the printed product. So as you go into the digital realm, I'll show you something here. Hold my iPad here. Let's go to a page I had up earlier here. When I first started this comic book series, I did do a lot of it. It started out on my iPad. But, you know, like I said, I kind of jumped around. So just to give an example, here is a page. And I will pull it up here in this paperback version, trade paperback, to show, you know, here it is in print. So printed out nicely. And this is oversized. This is a 9 by 12 version. And then, of course, I also have that reproduced here in this floppy version, which is like an 8.5 by 10 size, I think. And here's that same spread page, or that same page we were looking at. So slightly a smaller comic book output that I did. And so, but as you'll see, this was done in Procreate here. So now, to answer the question, what canvas size did I use in Procreate for this? So because I knew that this was going to be printed at the size of 8.5 by 10, I pretty much just set up my canvas to actual size. And I think that's one of the benefits of being able to work digitally, is that it's what I call like the first generation artwork, meaning if you did the drawing on paper, then you've got to scan that becomes a 2nd generation. And then once you output it to print, that becomes like the 3rd generation of that piece of artwork. So with digital, I feel that I can easily just do the artwork at pretty much actual size. So if you look at my pixel width here, I've got 5100 pixels by 6600 pixels. So in reality, what I'm actually doing is doing 8.5 by 11. And that's pretty much what this size is here. It's slightly under, but as you can see, I'm doing it to size. Now, the important thing that I wanted to make sure as I did this was the resolution was high enough. So I did it at probably an overkill resolution, 600 dpi. Ideally, you do these at 300 dpi, or at a minimum 300 dpi. But I just wanted to make sure that I had enough resolution, so I set this up as a 600 dpi 8.5 by 11 document. That, if you can see here are all the layers And in Procreate, one of the things that, and I have an older iPad, and I'm not sure if this is the cause, but the more layers you add in Procreate, the more layers you add, essentially you start to run out of, I guess, memory within Procreate to have additional layers. So, especially if I do a 2-page spread, which I think I've got one here. You know, if I'm doing my 2-page spreads, that's an even larger document in Procreate. So there's a 2-page spread here. So the main thing is, if you're going to do your workflow in Procreate, I would go with a minimum of 300 dpi on the resolution. Canvas size can be whatever size you want. If you're going for print, that's probably going to be, again, this version is 9:12. But most comics, I forget what they are, but they're even smaller than my 8.5 by 10.5. So get your canvas size, I would say, to the actual print size. Again, there's no need to go any larger, like the standard has been for years is 11 by 17, but that was because I think that was a holdover from back when they actually had to take the artboards and then shoot them with a like a bellows style camera or some other mechanical, like with film, and expose them and shoot them. And so you had to have them bigger because the artwork would need room, the artists would need room on the paper to draw and make, do finer work. But then also keep in mind that artwork can be reduced by about 40%. But with digital, again, you kind of, or you can do it at final size. And I just prefer to do it at final size because there's less resources and it takes up less info, memory in Procreate, meaning I can add more layers and do more effects. So bottom line is that get your page size to the actual size of print, get it to 600 dpi in Procreate. Again, you can probably get it with 300, and you should be fine with that. But I will also say that every single page here that I've drawn for my comic, and you can see here's more pages here from the series. And a couple of spread pages here. You can see this is all my comic book here in Procreate. I eventually bring them into Photoshop and I put the final touches on there if I need to make any adjustments or tweaks to the artwork. I actually will do it in Photoshop, because at that point, the artwork, once it's ready to be brought into the next stage, which is lettering, and I'll say I don't do any lettering in Procreate because I do my lettering in Adobe Illustrator, and then I put the books together in Adobe InDesign. So once the artwork is complete, all of this artwork here, I bring it into Photoshop for my comic books. And that's the case because, again, with my workflow, I've got a pre-press printing background, and I'm very familiar with that entire workflow. I know that when I got into Photoshop back in early 2000s, working in print, that was the standard. Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator. I even did Quark Express, actually. If anyone remembers Quark Express, yeah, that's how far back I go. But I'm familiar with that workflow. It works for me. When you get to the point where you're in Photoshop, you don't usually have to worry so much about resizing and losing quality at that point, as long as you start out in Procreate with high enough resolution, minimum 300. I go for 600 dpi. Again, if you're doing like a double page spread, you're going to have fewer layers the larger the document gets in Procreate, added with that higher resolution, but that's the trade-off. So that's my workflow. Again, these days, I have done both digital and traditional artwork, and I like having original artwork, because then if I want, I can sell that. But at the end of the day, I want to make my comics and get them produced. However that comes out. Nowadays, it's just I'm working digitally because it just tends to be faster for me. I don't have to worry about paper, ink, and brush. But I do love inking traditionally. It's still one of my favorite things to do when I'm doing my comic book artwork. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. And if you have any questions or comments, you can leave a comment down below.